cabin sat nestled deep in the woods, its weathered wooden walls blending seamlessly with the towering pines that surrounded it. It had been years, decades really, since any of us had set foot here. The place hadn't changed much. The same creaky porch steps led to the door, and the lake beyond still shimmered under the late afternoon sun, as if time itself had forgotten this little corner of the world. But we weren't kids anymore. Life had worn us down in different ways, carving lines into our faces and silences between our words. This reunion wasn't about nostalgia or laughter. It was about reckoning with ourselves, with each other, and with the choices that had pulled us apart. I arrived first, parking my car at the edge of the gravel driveway. The air smelled of pine needles and damp earth, a scent that brought back memories I tried hard to bury. Stepping out of the car, I stretched my legs and glanced around. The others would be here soon, though part of me wished they wouldn't come at all. 20 years ago, we'd promised never to return to this cabin after what happened. Yet here I was, standing on the threshold of ghosts I wasn't sure I wanted to face. Inside, the cabin felt smaller than I remembered. Dust coated every surface, and the faint mustiness of disuse hung heavy in the air. I opened the windows to let in some light, watching as motes of dust danced lazily in the golden beams. My fingers brushed against the old dining table where we used to gather for meals, arguments, secrets whispered that late into the night. Each scratch and groove told a story, but not all stories are meant to be revisited. The sound of tires crunching over gravel signaled the arrival of the first guest. Through the window, I saw Claire step out of her SUV, squinting up at the cabin like she wasn't sure she'd made the right decision. She looked older, her once carefree curls now tamed into a sleek bob, her sharp features softened by age. Still, there was something unmistakably familiar about her. The way she hesitated before stepping onto the porch, the nervous flicker in her eyes. "Hey," she said when she saw me, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her lips. "It's weird being back." "Yeah," I replied, holding the screen door open for her. "Feels like walking into a memory." She nodded, brushing past me without meeting my gaze. Inside, she wandered aimlessly, running her hand along the mantelpiece where family photos used to sit. "Do you remember those summers?" she asked softly, more to herself than to me, "when everything felt so simple?" "Not sure simple is the word I'd use," I muttered, thinking of the fights, the betrayals, the promises broken long before they could even take root. Claire shot me a look, one eyebrow raised, but didn't argue. Instead, she busied herself unpacking snacks from her bag, arranging them neatly on the counter like she needed something to do with her hands. By evening, everyone had arrived. Jake, whose easygoing charm had always masked deeper insecurities. Mia, quieter now than she'd been as a teenager, her fiery spirit tempered by years of responsibility. And finally, Sam, who lingered awkwardly by the door as if unsure whether he belonged. We stood in an uneven circle in the living room, exchanging polite greetings that barely scratched the surface of the tension simmering beneath. No one mentioned why we were here, not yet, but the unspoken reason hung thick in the air, heavier than the humidity outside. Dinner was a strained affair, plates clinking too loudly against forks, conversations faltering after only a few sentences. At one point, Jake attempted to lighten the mood with a joke about how terrible the plumbing had always been, but his laugh trailed off when no one joined him. Finally, Mia broke the silence. "Why are we really doing this?" she asked, setting her fork down with deliberate care. "We didn't come here just to reminisce." Her question landed like a stone dropped into still water, rippling through the group until someone had to answer. It was Claire who spoke first, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, because we owe it to her, to Anna. The name hit like a punch to the gut. For a moment, none of us moved, frozen by the weight of it. Anna, our fourth musketeer, the glue that held us together until the day she walked away and took pieces of us with her. None of us had seen her since that summer, 20 years ago, when she disappeared without explanation, leaving behind only a note scrawled hastily on the back of a receipt. "I can't stay. Please don't try to find me." Sam leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You think she'll actually show up?" he asked, his tone skeptical, but tinged with hope. "I don't know," Claire admitted. "But she sent the invitation. That has to mean something, right?" The invitation, a plain white envelope, addressed to each of us individually, had arrived 2 weeks earlier, postmarked from a town none of us recognized. Inside was a single line: "Meet me at the cabin. Midnight. Don't be late." There was no signature, but we all knew it was from Anna. Her handwriting hadn't changed. As midnight approached, we gathered nervously on the porch, staring out at the darkened lake. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows across the water. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl made us jump. When the clock struck 12, nothing happened. Just as frustration began to bubble over, a figure emerged from the tree line. A woman wrapped in a long coat, her face obscured by the hood. "Anna?" Jake called out, his voice cracking slightly. She stepped closer, lowering her hood to reveal features both familiar and foreign. Time had altered her, sharpening her cheekbones and streaking her hair with silver, but her eyes were the same, bright and piercing, capable of seeing straight through you. "Hi," she said simply, her voice softer than I remembered. For a moment, none of us knew what to say. Then Claire rushed forward, throwing her arms around Anna in a hug that seemed equal parts relief and anger. "Where have you been?" she demanded, pulling back to study Anna's face. "Do you have any idea what you put us through?" Anna flinched, but didn't pull away. "I know," she said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I couldn't explain then, but maybe I can now." We followed her inside, settling into the living room as she began to speak. Her story unfolded haltingly, fragments of truth pieced together like shards of glass. She'd left because she'd been diagnosed with a degenerative illness, one that robbed her of control over her body and mind. Afraid of becoming a burden, she'd chosen isolation instead, cutting ties with everyone she loved to protect them from watching her decline. "But why didn't you tell us?" Mia asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We would have stayed. We would have helped." Anna shook her head, her expression pained. "That's exactly why I couldn't. You deserve better than to watch me fade away." Her confession left us reeling, dredging up emotions we'd buried long ago. Jake paced the room, running a hand through his hair. "So what happens now? Are you okay?" "No," Anna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm done running. If you're willing, I'd like to spend whatever time I have left reconnecting. With you, with this place, with myself." The hours that followed were raw and messy, filled with apologies and confessions, laughter and tears. Old wounds reopened, but slowly, tentatively, they began to heal. By dawn, we were sitting on the dock, overlooking the lake, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the trees. Anna sat in the middle, her frail frame dwarfed by the vastness of the water, yet somehow larger than life. "I'm glad you came," she said, turning to each of us in turn. "Even if it's just for a little while longer, I'm glad we're together again." And in that moment, surrounded by the people who had shaped me, for better or worse, I realized that reunions aren't about fixing what's broken. They're about finding beauty in the cracks, strength in the scars, and meaning in the moments we share, however fleeting they may be.